I just interviewed Jon Ronson. So it's a little scoop that's not publicly out there yet, but a reward for anybody that watches live right away, or somebody that watches the replay. The Fantastic Story Society, the podcast, we've gotten so many great interviews lately, and Jon Ronson was the one I just recorded. And if you don't know who that is yet, you absolutely will. But as I always try to do, everything on What's Your Ghost Story, it's historically based. We're talking ghost stories, so we're talking about history. And part of the reason I'm doing these live streams is because we're still in quarantine, we're in lockdown, and I kind of don't want to lose the historical importance of this moment. The first time I did one of these was a little over a month ago, which is crazy that it was kind of that short ago, because I think then we were close to, like, we had just passed 1,000 deaths in America, and that was just such a mind-numbing idea that 1,000 people died from this. And I posted last about a little over a week ago, I think it was. Maybe it was a little bit more than that, but I think we're around 47,000, and now we're at 60,000 deaths. So I don't want to dwell too much on the negative, but I do want to keep in mind what is going on, because these videos will exist long after the live stream has ended. And one of the things that's going on in America right now is certain states are opening up. And by the way, yes, we're going to get to ghost stories and shadow people, and that will be by far the bulk of what we're talking about. But I just want to kind of mark this time as well. One of the things that's going on in America as we speak is that certain states are trying to open up, and there's controversy over, is it too soon or not? And I said this on the podcast, which hasn't come up yet, but in the end, it's all about us. We have to be aware. We have to try to educate ourselves as much as possible, which generally speaking means tuning out the politicians, trying to listen to the scientists and the doctors, anybody that's actually speaking from that place of knowledge. And one of the great places I go, this is something I do just about every day. I've included it in the video description. There's a couple of really good links to just kind of what's going on out there in the world. And one of them, they're both cases tracking information. One is from the Financial Times. This kind of shows what's going on in a global sense. See, the U.S. is at the top there. Fortunately, it's dipping, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. That's good news, great news. And there's just so much more information on this page. And here's the really scary thing is this is just deaths. It's very hard to see this. Oh, there you go. Deaths per day. Right now, U.S. is at about 1,800 per day. Not long ago, we were over 2,000. So I hate that 1,800 is good news, but it's positive news as long as we do keep things in place, because 1,800 is still a lot of people dying on a daily basis. And I just found out a friend of mine, their mom likely has it. She's had a fever for over a month, and now she's got pneumonia. So it's nasty stuff. Also, something that's come out just in the last week is that people that are younger, that are like 30 or 40 years old, and they may have gotten through the virus pretty easily, they are now suffering massive strokes. So we're still learning about what this virus does. And we're talking about strokes that you'd expect to see in somebody that's 80. So it's kind of horrifying. Oh, and the other one that's really great is CNN has again, it's just tracking. So I know a lot of people, you might have one bias or another and think, oh, I'm not going to look at anything on CNN. This is just numbers. One of the really interesting things about it is, in addition to tracking individual, just total numbers and all that, it has a state by state listing of, you can put, like, there's Wisconsin, and you can see that the number of cases is doubling every 2 weeks. And that's kind of going across the board. A lot of states are like that every 2 weeks. Minnesota is every week. Oh, and something they just added, these websites are updating their information all the time. This is an interesting page that shows just within the last 2 weeks how cases are changing. So you can see that certain states are dipping, certain states are growing. Tools so that you yourself can make informed decisions about getting back to your daily life. So just want to throw some casual topics out there too. I know I've been cooking. I've been cooking a lot the last couple of weeks, and I think a lot of America has. I tried baking for my first time. It went all right. But something I learned definitely was, if you have cinnamon and sugar baked apples, you can do just about anything and it's going to turn out pretty good. And also, I just made a spaghetti squash dish. And the second time I've used spaghetti squash, and it is awesome. It's so delicious, so easy to work with too. So if anybody's had any good baking experiences, let me know. And also, I'm sure a lot of people are catching up on reading that they've been meaning to do. This is something that I would like to do, like to finish, actually. This is a book I've had for a while. And hello, Robin. Thanks for joining. But Prohibition, 13 Years That Changed America. Edward, I think his last name is pronounced Beer, which it really works well for this book. But this is a fascinating book. It really looks at America before Prohibition happened and then continues to tell the story of Prohibition, really focusing on a guy in Cincinnati who the book, The Great Gatsby, was very possibly based on the guy that's written about in this book. So I would love to finish reading this. If anybody else has any good book suggestions out there, because, hey, hopefully we're all quarantining, we're staying at home. We are needing to fill our day with entertainment and some education too. But the topic today was suggested by a very dear friend of mine, Kathleen Wicks. She wanted to talk about shadow people. And that is one of my favorite topics because it's so freaky. Max Tim, my co-host of the Fantastic Story Society, this is the stuff that when he wants to get really creeped out, he'll ask me about it. The Fantastic Story Society podcast is coming back big. As I mentioned, we have a lot of really great guests that we've already recorded. But we're on Google Play Music, we're on Spotify. There's been requests at a whole bunch of different podcast catchers. So if you try to find this podcast, The Fantastic Story Society, and if you can't find it, just let me know. I'd like to then make sure I'm on the directory. Okay, anyway, so for the longest time, if people asked me, which they always ask me, have you ever seen a ghost? And I'd be able to say once. I've seen some strange phenomena that are considered paranormal. Ghost lights I've seen on a number of occasions, and these are these bright white balls of light, like about the size of a softball maybe, that they flash, they dart around, they appear, disappear, and intensely bright white. So we're not talking about a firefly or something like that. It is pure white. And I've seen it at one time at Bachelor's Grove, one time at Archer Woods Cemetery. And the time at Archer Woods, I was leading the Pete McMurray show on WCKG back long ago, and that existed. A live Halloween night on the radio ghost hunt. And there was a whole bunch of people. This was the most spectacular one because not only do we see a ghost light, multiple people, but we're in a cemetery and you have all of those shiny headstones. So you just saw the reflection on all the headstones. It was quite an amazing sight. And we don't really know what those are. There's all sorts of theories. But as far as that's not what people really want to hear about when they ask, have you seen a ghost? They want to hear about the librarian in the beginning of Ghostbusters, which, no, I haven't seen anything like that, unfortunately. But I would talk about an occasion where I saw a full form. In this situation, a friend was over and we weren't paranormal investigating or anything like that. She was watching the movie. I fell asleep and she didn't notice that I was sleeping and started to talk to me, which woke me up. So I woke up and I looked over at her and there was a human form standing there, easily regular full-grown adult size. I could not see through them. It was still pretty light in the room, so it was not in the middle of the night or anything like that. I could not see through them. They were standing actually between her and the television from where I was sitting, and he was standing beside her and looking down on her. And it sounds scary, but in the moment it was just startling. Like, ooh, what was this? What is this? I said, someone's in here. And as I said that, this thing dissolved very quickly, less than a second. But it didn't just flash away, it dissolved, but super quick. Also, there was a little, it seemed like an outline of static, like TV static, that kind of white and black electricity kind of looking around the form of this entity. And I thought that, I don't know what the hell that was, but that was weird. And it was at that moment that I thought about it. And I remember that before I fell asleep, I felt what kind of sounded what felt like a hand brushed down my leg like that, starting at my knee and going all the way down past my foot. Now, in the moment, I thought, I wasn't really looking. I thought maybe I had a blanket that was draped over my legs, and then the blanket was halfway off the bed, and then gravity just pulled it down the rest of the way. And of course, at that point, I sprung up and looked to see, was there a blanket down there? And there wasn't. So the fact that this weird visual was associated with something tactile as well was mind-boggling to me and noteworthy, I should say. And for the longest time, I would say, Yeah, that's my ghost story. That's the ghost I've seen. And then I was sitting out back. By the way, amazing book here, The Encyclopedia of Ghosts and Spirits by Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Rosemary passed away just about a year ago, but she did so much writing in the meantime. And I mean, look at this one book alone. It's a tome, and this is a great, highly recommended book if anybody is into this topic, because it has every noteworthy phenomena, lots of different beliefs. It's just a great resource. So I was sitting out back having a bonfire, a little campfire with my buddy Max and maybe some other roommates as well. And Max asked me about shadow people. And I thought, I could talk about what I think they are, but let me get this book and I'll read it out to her, and I'll read it to you as well. And then you'll see how I got the chills as I was reading it. Shadow people. Dark figures associated with nighttime visitations and some haunted places. Shadow people appear as solid black figures who are darker than darkness. Most appear to be male. Some wear coats and hats. They're usually 6.5 feet in height. They have substance and form and can interrupt light and block objects from view. Shadow people rarely communicate, but may seem intensely interested in human beings. Bedroom watchers. These figures are discovered standing by a bedside or in a corner of the room when a person awakens in the night. They seem to stare at people in bed, even though they have no visible eyes or facial features. Most do not behave in a threatening manner, though their presence is often terrifying. They can remain for long periods of time and, when observed, disappear suddenly or melt through walls and ceilings. Some act aggressively towards people, causing choking sensations similar to the old hag, which old hag is a whole nother can of worms. It's kind of a more folkloric concept. There may be no single explanation for shadow people. They are not likely to be ghosts. Dark, ghostly figures seen running around haunted locations are more shadow figures than shadow people. When you see something move out of the corner of your eye, that kind of a thing. That's not the same as a shadow person. However, as noted above, shadow people are found in haunted locations too, including wooded areas where they are known in folklore as watchers. So you always love when something that's happening in modern day has roots. So ancient people have reported seeing these as well, and they call them watchers, which is really riveting to me, because this thing was standing over, just staring down my friend. An explanation favored by some researchers is that shadow people are interdimensional beings. They find their way into the physical world and seem to have a purpose, for what reason unknown, of observing humans. They may show up as bedroom visitors because the nature of a human sleeping or dreaming consciousness enables entry for them. Their appearance may be a form that they deliberately assume, or it may be the only way they can manifest in our realm. Many experiencers feel shadow people are a nasty spirit, even a demon, because they sense evil or trickery radiating from them. Almost all experiencers, I should say, are deeply frightened of shadow people, even though they are not done any harm. They are sometimes associated with turbulent emotion. For example, many people who have had significant shadow people experiences can link them to states of emotional upheaval, such as anger, sadness, loneliness, and so forth. Other people may be physically open in such a way as to perceive shadow people more easily than others. Some haunted places where shadow people are prevalent, such as Waverly Hills Sanatorium, where thousands of people have died, may be permeated with thought forms of negative emotions. So, as we say a lot to unpack there, because there's so many similarities between my experience observing this and what is written there in the book. So many different little elements. And I'll have to say that the person that was being observed was going through a very traumatic time in her life. So that makes sense. Dave Schrader, Darkness Radios and Ghost Adventures, he has seen shadow people at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So it's interesting that Rosemary mentions it right there in the book. Really quickly, when I was giving my LA Hauntings tour, where I would take people through downtown LA and Hollywood and tell ghost stories, I had incredible shadow people experiences relayed to me by people that were on the tour. In the first case, it was a private tour. It was just a couple, a man and I think it's his girlfriend. And the guy didn't seem all that into the ghost stories. He was kind of cracking jokes. He was definitely not taking things seriously. And I was like, oh, this guy got dragged along, which also sucks for the tour guide. You love when 50% of your audience doesn't want to be there. And then, oh, thank you, Kathleen. I'm seeing all of your mentions over on the What's Your Ghost Story side now. Kathleen has seen 2 shadow people on 2 separate occasions. So 2 people at a time? I've never heard of anything like that. I definitely want to hear about this. I cannot believe we haven't talked about this before. And thank you for sending the prayers to my friend's mom. Fantastic Story Society podcasts are awesome. Well, that's a fact. Thank you so much. But hi, and thank you so much for watching. So this guy, we were over by the Hollywood Tower Hotel. Really awesome, early, like 1920s era building that's still in use today as an apartment building. And it's a place with a big mafia connection. And one of the biggest, maybe even the first mafia hit in LA history happened within a block. So we kind of park at the site of that murder, which Bugsy Siegel committed, and tell a couple of different stories at this location. And this guy that, again, didn't seem all that interested in ghost stories, starts to ask about shadow people, which hadn't come up on the tour yet. So I'm like, okay, well, he must know something about something, because this isn't the most common ghostly phenomena. I was very hesitant with like telling him stories and sharing my thoughts and whatnot, because I was kind of like waiting for ridicule from him, which, again, as a speaker, is not a fun position to be in. But then I asked, like, why are you asking? He's like, well, because I've seen shadow people. I've seen a shadow person on multiple occasions. And now I'm the one that's being hesitant, like, really. But the more he talked, the more I could tell, like, he was actually super freaked out about it. He said that he would be awoken in the night and this thing would attack him. And he described fighting it off and eventually breaking free, and it would disappear. And this is nothing I've ever, at that time, I'd ever heard about, is the idea of a shadow person making contact and even physically harming someone. So I was a little bit skeptical, but I was very curious, and I could tell that he wasn't lying. Now, I think it was just a week or two later, somebody else on the tour had a bizarrely similar story. He was in the Navy. He was stationed on a transport ship, and I think he was based out of San Diego. And he said that their ship is haunted. Now, I know for all of you military history buffs out there, like, what's the name of the ship? I don't remember. I cannot believe, I don't even know if I asked, but I was just so enthralled with the story that I just wanted to keep him talking. And he said that they have activity on the ship, including he would get attacked in the middle of the night by a shadow person. And actually, with the first guy, I asked, like, did you know, what did it look like? And he said he would be able to, because the figure would kind of attack, get him into a chokehold kind of a thing. So like, how do you know where he was? Because it's a shadow. And he said I could see, like, the street lights would be shining through my windows, and I would see myself and this entity, our own shadows. So the shadow person can cast a shadow, apparently, according to this person. And both people described the attack in the same way, which is being wrapped up in a bear hug from behind, having your arms pinned to yourself. And I asked, why, or how did the fight end? Because you both described being overpowered and that you weren't, you weren't faring well in this fight. And both guys, totally independently, they didn't know each other, and this was weeks apart. Both guys said the fight ended when I realized I couldn't win it. And that's when the shadow figure dissipated. How chill! I have chills right now saying that. So one of the new theories, and again, I really liked the interdimensional being philosophy, because that could be just there's interdimensional bleed through, and we are seeing into their world. Maybe they're seeing us, and they're getting freaked out because we're casting this shadow form in another dimension. So we're not even consciously aware of each other. But one of the other theories is that this is the first, now moving on to the second stage of an invasion, where a stage one is just observing. That's why you'd see, since ancient times, the Watchers are there observing us. And now will be the next stage of an invasion, where they're testing the waters a little bit, seeing how we fight, seeing how easily it is we could be overcome. But the other thing that I find absolutely fascinating about this is, as we're talking about this phenomena through the years, usually a ghost sighting is a ghost sighting. Objects move. Poltergeist activity is a certain description. You don't usually see phenomena evolve. The idea that what a shadow person is today is what the shadow person experience would be like hundreds of years from now. But we're seeing that that's changing now. So it's something very fascinating to keep an eye on. Maybe it's a form of time travel, Kathleen says. Listen, this is the thing I love about the world of the paranormal is we all have theories, and they're all valid because right now they can't really be proven. So somebody that's been studying their entire life has just as much a chance of getting something right as somebody that's only been looking into it for a little bit. So, yeah, shadow people stories. I thought I was the first one that had a story where I think it made contact with me before I saw it. But then now I'm thankful that that's all the contact I had. I was not assaulted in any kind of a way. And again, that's one of the very few stories of my own I have, but it just continued to be confirmed as I read more about what shadow people are. So something very interesting to take a look at, be cognizant of. I want to start doing these on a fairly regular basis. I'm thinking maybe Wednesday evenings. But if anybody has any topics on anything else you would like me to talk about, the first subject last week was submitted. Somebody was spirit attachments. That's what I talked about. And then Kathleen suggested shadow people. I'm completely open to whatever anybody wants to talk about going forward. I also want to try to keep these relatively short, half hour ish. And yeah, now it's about time to go watch the new Parks and Rec episode, which I'm excited about. If anybody has any questions about anything, definitely reach out to me. You can leave comments here on these videos. Oh, and tomorrow there's a YouTube video premiere about this amazing place in southwestern Wisconsin called Berry Tavern. Head on over to my YouTube channel. You can probably most easily find it by just searching Scott Markus, Markus. And we did a drone video at this amazingly haunted location in September of last year. So before the lockdown went into effect, and I'm very happy to be showing this with everybody now. And it actually ties in with a cholera outbreak. So it's kind of oddly poignant right now. But again, thanks for the millionth time for watching. And I look forward to talking to everyone on a future live stream.